Hello. เช็ควันเช็ควันเช็คออดิโอเช็คออดิโอเช็ค
Welcome to the first day of our conference. We'd like to invite everyone to please come inside the conference room and find your seat so we
master of ceremony for this morning. On behalf of the UNEP convened CCAC, a very warm welcome to this opening of this Climate and Clean Air Conference 2023. And I wish to thank our hosts here at the UN Conference Center, the Executive Secretary, UNESCAP, but also the Regional Director of UNEP, GROW-UP. And this event is set out to be the CCAC's annual meeting, which is the gathering that brings together the 80 countries and 80 non-state actor partners. And it looks at all the short-lived climate pollutants that we have on our list, so that this methane, the hydrofluorocarbons, black carbon, and tropospheric ozone. And we have teamed up with our colleagues in the regional office of UNEP to put together a full week program to make it also the Clean Air Week. And it's a program that is composed with plenaries and breakouts to maximize the exchanges of experience. And there's a wealth of knowledge in this room that we want to absolutely build on. We want to focus on solutions. The problems we know, we've identified, and we really want to put a strong emphasis on solutions to inspire action, but also to partner in action. We, I think, all recognize it's a job that's bigger than one of us. And due to the transboundary nature as well, the cooperation is even more important. We will also share new knowledge and new scientific findings that do make a compelling case for action. And we have actually 2 reports that are being launched this week as well. 2 scientific reports. We'll also look into new programmatic activities. For example, on the CCAC side, the new Clean Air flagship that we look at. We will take stock where we are in implementation, and we will celebrate successes, including the ones on the Global Methane Pledge implementation, for which the CCAC is a core implementer. And we'll also co-create and chart a way forward, both with regard to regional cooperation as well as the work in the different sectors. We have an exciting program ahead of us, and there's a lot of time that we've foreseen to mingle during breaks. And we have a cocktail tonight as well that I already want to mention to you right now. We have field visits foreseen at the end of the week on the Friday. Please check your emails to sign up, and we would hope that you could register for a field trip if you're interested by lunchtime. Now, Excellencies, Minister Badardene, but we'll see Minister Han Vajin, Minister Miki Yamada, the Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Mrs. Armida Sasya Alspajana, and the Regional Director of the Regional Office of UNEP, Chen Sering. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we have 2 major crises of our times on our program. Quality levels are below WHO's safe levels pretty much everywhere. It's unacceptable that the very act that keeps us alive makes us sick as well, breathing. And the second is climate change. The global stocktake underway shows us that we're not on track. We're making progress, but it's too slow. And winning too slowly is losing. In this case, without decisive action on both deep decarbonization of our economies and the reduction of the short-lived climate pollutants, we will be hitting dangerous tipping points. Now, taking on both air quality and climate change in an integrated manner as our one atmosphere gives us an impact edge, the will and the means to act now. And you will see that throughout the whole week, in the program, we'll move back and forth across the different crises, the pollutants behind these crises, as well as the solutions that gives us multiple wins for sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do this. We do have the tools to address climate change and pollution simultaneously, but we must work across silos if we want to achieve near-term success for people and the planet. And the issues are transboundary. I mentioned that already. And this calls for partnership within countries and between countries. The solutions do cut across key sectors. So that means as well, we must work within and across value chains in public-private partnerships, teaming up, and in setting the right framework conditions with legislation and standards. And we ask to step up as individuals too, from citizen science to consumption decisions. It's never been a more critical time, and there's almost no place on earth where the air we breathe is safe, and the 7 million people dying prematurely from air pollution is simply unacceptable. And as we witness the real-time impacts of climate change, we must act now individually and together. There's really no time to lose. And this meeting is tying in with different other processes and regional efforts that are underway. And it's important to note that each region now has a process in place if we look at air pollution. And for the Asia-Pacific region, a high-level forum on clean air was convened in March in Mongolia under the leadership of His Excellency here with us, Mr. Batosi, Minister of Environment and Tourism from Mongolia. And it launched the Asia Pacific Regional Action Program on air pollution. And that covers improving air quality management, facilitating air quality monitoring, sharing open data, exchanging best practice, and supporting capacity building and mobilizing multilateral cooperation. And we're really honored and delighted that the Honorable Minister is with us here today to set the stage for this event and to make the connections to this important process that has been started. We're very proud Mongolia has been a partner in the CCAC since 2014. And Your Excellency, the floor is yours. And I think you all must put on your earphones, your headsets. We will have translation. Minister will speak.
Мөндөд төлөөлөгчд хадагтай ноёдоо хадагтай армида салсая алишавана байгаль орчны сорилтуудыг даван туулах хүчин чармаалтыг бэхжүүлэх тэр дундаа үндэсний болон олон улсын хэмжээнд тулгараад буй гол сорилтуудын нэг болох уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийг сааруулах цэвэр агаарын төлөөх үйл ажиллагааг эрчимжүүлэх зорилготой уур амьсгал ба цэвэр агаар 2023 баг хурлын зохион байгуулагчдад талархал илэрхийлье. Хоёр талын болон бүс нутгийн хэмжээнд цэвэр агаарын төлөөх үр дүнд суурилсан хамтын ажиллагаа сайжирч сүүлийн үед олон санаачлаг гарч байна. Эдгээр санаачлагууд нь бүс нутгийн холбогдох байгууллагуудтай хамтын ажиллагааг улам бэхжүүлж чадахыг сайжруулах зорилгыг биелүүлэхэд хувь нэмэр оруулна гэдэгт найдаж байна. Цаашлаад уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийг сааруулах агаарын бохирдлыг бууруулах чиглэсэн хамтын ажиллагааг үргэлжлүүлэн хөгжүүлэх бүс нутгийн олон талт хамтын ажиллагааг эрчимжүүлэх шинжилгээ ухаан болгож суурилсан үйл ажиллагааг дэмжих нь чухал гэдгийг онцлоё. Эрхэм төлөөлөгчдөө Монгол улс 2023 оны 3 дугаар сард Нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын Аз нухан талайн эдийн засгийн нийгмийн комисс Нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын суур байгаль орчны хөтөлбөртэй хамтран цэвэр агаар өндөр түвшний форумыг Улаанбаатар хотод зохион байгуулсан. Энэхүү форум нь агаарын бохирдлын эсрэг шинэлэг шийдэл, шилдэг туршлагыг солилцох, тэр дундаа бүс нутгийн хамтын ажиллагааг бэхжүүлэх, бодлого мэдээллийн технологийн хэрэгцээг тодорхойлох боломжийг бүрдүүлсэн. Улаанбаатарт болсон форумоор агаарын бохирдлын эсрэг бүс нутгийн үйл ажиллагааны хөтөлбөрийг хэрэгжүүлэх үндэс суурийг тавьж, бүс нутгийн хамтын ажиллагааны чиглэл хэлбэрийг тодорхойлсон. Бүс нутгийн улс орнуудын харилцааг хангаж хөтөлбөрийг амжилттай хэрэгжүүлнэ. Уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийг сааруулах, агаарын чанарыг сайжруулах хоёр талын хамтын ажиллагааны амжилтаас хуваалцахад 2023 онд Монгол Японы хамтарсан кредит олох механизмын 10 жилийн ой тохиож байгаа бөгөөд сэргээгт гэрчим хүчний салбарт нийт 130 гаруй сая долларын хөрөнгө оруулалтаар төсөл хэрэгжүүлж байна. Хамтарсан кредит олох механизмыг амжилттай хэрэгжүүлсэн туршлагад үндэслэн энэ онд Монгол Улсын засгийн газар, Бүгд найрамдах Солонгос Улсын засгийн газар хоорондын уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийг сааруулахад хамтран ажиллах тухай суур хэлтсээрт гар үсэг зорсон. Цаашлаад энэ чиглэлээр Сингапур улстай хамтран ажиллах тухай санамжчигт ойрын хугацаанд гараа үсгэж зурхаар төлөвлөж байна. Олон улсын хувьд 2021 онд Монгол улс Монреалийн протоколд оруулсан Кигалийн нэмэлт өөрчлөлтийг сойрхон баталж, хөгжлийн төлшүүдтэй хамтран үндэсний чадварыг бэхжүүлэх үйл ажиллагааг хэрэгжүүлж байна. Бидний хүчин чармаалт богино хугацаатай уур амьсгалын бохирдуулагчийг бууруулах дэлхийн зорилтуудад хувь нэмэр оруулна гэж үзэж байна. Түүнчлэн Монгол улс дэлхийн метанхийн амлалтанд нэгдэн орсон бөгөөд уур амьсгал ба цэвэр агаарын холбоотой хамтран уг амлалтыг хэрэгжүүлэх үйл ажиллагааны төлөвлөгөөг боловсруулахад бэлэн байна. Монгол улс 2 жилд нэг удаа гаргадаг уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийн конвенцийн үндэсний 4-р тайлангаа эцэлж байна. Тайлангаар 1990-ээс 2020 оны хүлэмжийн ялгарлын тоолгыг албан ёсоор танилцуулах болно. Их дэлхий бол бидний гэр, байгаль их бидний оршихуй гэдгийг өргөлж санаж явахыг та бүхэндээ уриалж байна. Хойчийнхаа сайн сайхны төлөө нэг зорилго, нэгдмэл хүсэл эрмэлзэлтэйгээр хамтдаа бүтээцгээе. Эрүүл орчин, эрүүл хүн, эрүүл дэлхий. Анхаарал тавьсанд баярлалаа.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your inspiring words, for having highlighted so clearly the importance of addressing the topics at hand, as well as the actions taken. And we are really, really delighted to work together with you as well. You mentioned the roadmap, for example. We're very happy to look into this as we go forward, and as we come back together in a future moment, then report back on what is being done. We were meant to turn out to our host country, Thailand, and unfortunately, the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment was called away. We have the teams from Thailand in the room, so any kind of discussion is still possible on that level, but we want to recognize as well the important activities that are being done in the country, the national efforts to improve air quality. There's an integrated national report simultaneously achieving climate change and air quality goals in Thailand that has been put together, and that is an important milestone, particularly for the improvements to public health. And we've been working very closely with Thailand's Pollution Control Department on a number of things there as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. And since the topic is clearly of importance from an environmental and a health perspective, but also from an economic perspective, it's very, very much anchored in sustainable development. And with that, I would like to turn to the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, UNESCAP, and we're honored that Mrs. Armida Salcia Espajana is with us, the Executive Secretary, and I'd like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Martina. Excellency, Mr. Bat Erdeneb Bat Uzi, Minister of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia. Distinguished participants, colleagues, it is my pleasure to be with you for the Climate and Clean Air Conference 2023, held in collaboration with Air Quality Action Week. And I would like to welcome all members of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition to Bangkok. It is most appropriate and very timely that the CCAC meets here, as there is a growing recognition across our region of the urgency to improve the region's air quality and to accelerate climate action, which is your very core mission. 2 weeks ago, member states convened at the 79th session of the Commission under the theme Accelerating Climate Action in Asia and the Pacific for Sustainable Development. Their deliberations took place in the context of a growing number of climate-induced disasters affecting the region and record-breaking heat waves. If I'm sure your colleagues that were in Bangkok as well as elsewhere very much felt that the temperature was much warmer than the normal temperature during this time. Again, this reflects that the temperatures in our region have increased faster than the global mean. Extreme weather events and natural hazards have become more frequent and more intense. 6 of the 10 countries most affected by climate disasters are in our region, and our Pacific Island nations face an existential threat. In 2020, Asia and Pacific accounted for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions, and many of the region's economies remain powered by fossil fuels. Carbon-intensive development, unplanned urbanization, and obsolete technologies have led to increases in emissions of both greenhouse gases as well as air pollution. In fact, air pollution has become a common problem across our region. Our cities are regularly home to the world's worst air quality. IQ Air reported that 47 of 50 most polluted cities in 2022 were in Asia. Actually, this has been ongoing for the past few years, not only in 2022. Thus, policies and solutions must be developed to promote co-benefits, not only for climate and air quality, but also for health and economic growth. CCAC's and UNEP's 2019 report, Air Pollution in Asia and Pacific, Science-Based Solutions, confirm that effective policy solutions and technologies to combat air pollution exist and are essential to meeting the climate challenge. Another promising news is that member states have now committed to strengthening regional cooperation to tackle these air pollution and climate crises. To combat the region's poor air quality, member states recently adopted the Regional Action Program on Air Pollution, calling first for improvement of air quality management. Countries must continuously review and improve their national air quality targets and management. We know that circumstances vary across our region, but all countries can improve, and an enhanced regional exchange of experiences can support country-level actions. The Regional Action Program recognizes the clear need for enhanced air quality monitoring and sharing of data and solutions. Implementing these actions requires building effective partnership and capitalizing on the expertise of countries and institutions, including CCAC members. Member states also enhance their commitments to regional cooperation on climate action. The recent Commission session adopted a resolution for promoting cooperation on low emission and climate resilient development, supported by policies and strategies, capacity building, technical support, as well as partnership. Nearly 40 countries have announced their goals for carbon neutrality by mid-century, and we see governments already expanding renewable energy capacities and integrating nature-based solutions. More needs to be done, and faster also, to achieve the net zero commitment. This requires enhanced regional and multilateral cooperation. The CCA conference could not have come to the region at a more critical time to realize the aspirations to clean our air, as well as accelerate climate action. We need the engagement of all partners and the understanding you can bring to member states on the benefits of integrated climate and clean air action. Let me again thank you, all of you, for your participation, contribution in this conference, and extend our appreciation to our colleagues at UNEP and CCAC for your great collaboration in meeting these important challenges. I wish you successful, fruitful discussion, and look forward to taking forward the outcomes of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Armida. And it's very clear UNESCAP is at the heart of this regional cooperation on air quality and the other subjects in this very region. And I think we cannot underestimate the importance of this process that has been started, the Asia-Pacific Regional Action Program for Air Pollution, which really goes back to a UNESCAP ministerial declaration. So I think it's really this reflection of the importance of addressing this transboundary issue through transboundary cooperation. And we definitely look forward to continuing this cooperation. So thank you. And we will be able to dive in more detail into the elements around this process over the coming days. We have different sessions that are set out to really that allow us to dig deeper. Now, we heard about why it's important to address air quality and climate change in an integrated manner. We heard about the political will that is out there already. We heard about an example of regional processes, but air pollution, the Asia-Pacific region is not the only one. And the CCAC had issued its integrated assessment report for Asia-Pacific, and Amida mentioned it. It found 25 measures that are readily available to take action. So we also know the what, and we've done that actually for the three key regions. So not only for this one. So we know the what. Finance is where the rubber hits the road, where we now need to look as well to achieve change at scale. I think we can all agree on that. We've seen that less than 2% of climate finance goes, for example, into methane action, and even less finance goes into air quality action. We keep calling it, it's the poor cousin of climate change. And there's something that doesn't sit very well. But by addressing the topics in an integrated manner, I think we have one key opportunity as well to get out of this conundrum. Now, the Asia Development Bank is a leading MDB on financing for air quality. Especially, there is a Asia Clean Blue Skies program to leverage technical and financial resources of the ADB and its partners to build the capacity and the design and implementation of investment projects with air quality and low carbon benefits. We're pleased to have Mr. Anuj Mehta, the Thailand country director of the Asian Development Bank, with us. And the floor is yours to tell us more about how the ADB is supporting this nexus. Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Martina. Great to be here, and thank you very much to the United Nations Environment Programme and Climate and Clean Air Coalition for inviting us and having us here at the opening session. Honourable Minister for Environment and Tourism for Mongolia, Mr. Batulzi, lovely to meet you here. Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Ibu Amida, good to see you again. And very good morning to all the delegates and participants over here. I think as has already been laid out, a central part of how to make the change will be moored on really three things, which is, I think, how quickly we can usher in technological solutions to meet the challenges of climate and clean air pollution. It will be finance and how quickly the scale of finance can be brought in to really make the technology happen in time. And I think the third is implementation. We used to always say technology, implementation, finance, TIF, if you like, have to work together. And ADB has been working pretty strongly in terms of aiming at these three different areas: climate finance, biodiversity, oceans acidification, as well as clean air. We had set out a target for around 80 billion cumulative climate financing across all these areas for all our developing member countries between 2019 and 2030. And in 2021, we increased that to 100 billion. So the ambition of ADB in terms of it's using its own finance, 100 billion, is elevated, as well as mobilizing finance from other sources. Of the 100 billion that we are targeting by 2030 cumulatively for climate, 66 billion is targeted at climate mitigation and 34 at adaptation. We've also very clearly put forward our ambition of committing all our new operations to be aligned with the Paris Agreement, with 85% of all non-sovereign operations to be fully aligned with Paris Agreement by July 2023, and 100% of all the operations that we do through governments, the sovereign operations. Now, I think that's a general sort of approach that ADB set for itself in terms of mobilizing finance for this critical area. More specifically, if I go into a number of programs, which actually may give some color to how we are doing this, we're working with a number of partners in the international community. I think one absolute truth about this is we have to work together to really drive these three areas: technology, implementation, finance into this sector, onto this theme. Three programs which may illustrate this, which target different aspects of how we address it. One is the energy transition mechanism. We launched this in Glasgow at the COP26 by our President Asakawa, which very specifically aims at accelerating the retirement of coal power assets, transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy generation. And it started with 3 pilot countries: Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, some of whom were already there at COP26 at the announcement, and 2 more have joined. It's a very challenging area to very specifically focus on transition from fossil to renewable energy. So ETM is an area in which ADB has put a lot of its efforts and resources. And with Pakistan and Kazakhstan also joining the initiative for ETM, it's growing, and it's got a very strong team based out of our Jakarta office, which is trying to develop this initiative further. The second, which has been something I have been driving myself, is the ACGF, the ASEAN Catalytic Green Facility, which was launched in 2019, owned by all the countries in ASEAN, managed by ADB. And this fundamentally says that for clean air, climate projects, we need to de-risk projects to mobilize the scale of finance needed from private sector. So ACGF, which is now effectively a $2 billion fund, aims to de-risk projects, prepare them better, and then catalyze in capital from any source. Green bonds, we've set up an initiative for that as part of it, and so on and so forth, blended finance, etc. Tremendously exciting, aiming to ramp up its 29-30 odd projects a lot more over the next few months, actually. And the third, which was mentioned earlier, is the Asia Clean Blue Skies program, which was launched Q4 last year. And that, again, very specifically says that for clean air and climate benefits in urban transport, energy, agriculture, and industry, how do we create those pipeline of projects And 3 outputs have been put forward there. So we'll say, can we help using our technical assistance to prepare developing member country level policies, plans and strategies, capacities, and then crucially those pilot projects which can signal the models of technology implementation and finance that can be brought to bear as models in energy transport urban areas for clean skies in Asia. So, just to give you a flavor, those are the programs. There's a lot of technical assistance and teams working on developing these policies, capacities, and projects across the region. Very, very excited and keen to keep hearing from our member countries to give us more and more challenges and projects, especially to work with in scoping these innovative finance approaches in projects. And I hope that we can use this to scale up the finance needed. 1.6 trillion per year in Asia Pacific for climate finance and related areas. And that scale of financing is growing very fast. With that, I think I'll end my remarks here. I hope I gave a flavor of what we are trying to do already. There's a lot of work underway, a lot of good projects, which we are happy to share with individually as we go forward. Thank you very much. And back to you, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think it's very illustrative to see how it starts with setting a target. I mean, making this commitment, turning this commitment into something really real. Thank you for having taken us through the concrete programs and windows that are out there to give us an idea how we can actually tie into that. I think what is absolutely needed to highlight is the importance of de-risking. I think that's critical going forward. It's something that has come up over and over again in the CCAC context as well. And the point about the pipeline, making sure that there's a project pipeline that is fundable, and it starts with the TA component. And we have on the CCAC board meeting this week a topic on how to help with that process as well, looking at a bit of a finance plan with early stage support, pre-feasibility, basically building on the roadmap work, but then also looking at a sort of a handshake process so that whatever we do ties in very well with what the development banks are doing. There's a working group that is being put together with the World Bank and the regional development banks. So I think that's a space to be watched as we go forward. But thank you very much for paving this way so ably and having brought these messages to us. And maybe I should mention as well that later this year, and it's obviously not only about conferences, but they help us keep the momentum as well as we chip away on the work as we go. There's another event that is being planned together with Clean Air Asia and the Asian Development Bank, hosted at the Asian Development Bank later this year in November in Manila. I think that will be another very, very good spot, the better air quality, where we've been teaming up as well. So with that, I would like to turn to 2 virtual contributions that we now have, video messages from His Excellency Han Wajin, Minister of Environment of the Republic of Korea, and then followed by a contribution of Her Excellency Miki Yamada, the State Minister of Environment of Japan. And both countries are long-term supporters of the CCAC and of the work on air quality, and they have taken considerable action at home. So we will first turn to the contribution of Minister Han Wajin.
안녕하십니까. 대한민국 환경부 장관 한화진입니다. 2023년 대기질 행동주간 개최를 진심으로 축하드립니다. 이번 행사는 아시아 태평양 지역에서 처음으로 정부 대표와 국제기구, 대기 분야 단체의 관계자들이 모여 대기 환경 개선과 기후변화 대응을 위한 대안을 모색하고 국제적인 노력을 결집하는 자리입니다. 오늘 뜻깊은 행사를 마련해 주신 UN 환경계획 아태지역 사무소장님, 기후청정대기연합체 공동의장님을 비롯한 관계자분들께 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 아시는 바와 같이 기후변화와 대기오염 문제는 상호 밀접하게 연계되어 있으며 공동 대응이 필요한 과제입니다. 이에 따라 대한민국은 대기 환경 개선과 기후변화 대응을 위한 다양한 정책을 추진하고 있습니다. 2027년까지 초미세먼지 농도를 30% 감축하겠다는 목표를 이행하기 위해 지난해 말 대기 환경 개선 종합 계획을 수립했고 2030년 국가 온실가스 감축 목표 달성을 위해 최근 제1차 국가 탄소 중립 녹색 성장 기본 계획을 확정했습니다. 대한민국 정부는 앞으로도 발전, 산업, 수송 등 부문별 대기오염물질 저감 대책을 충실하게 이행하고 기후변화에 따라 심각해지는 고농도 미세먼지 또 오존 문제 해결을 위해 과학적인 분석과 연구를 토대로 체계적인 관리 방안을 마련해 나갈 것입니다. 또한 아시아 태평양 지역 국가는 물론 기후청정 대기연합체, UN 환경계획 등 다양한 국제기구, 단체들과 함께 경험과 정책을 지속적으로 교류하고 협력을 강화해 나가겠습니다. 이를 통해 기후위기 극복과 대기질 개선 성과를 창출하는 데 대한민국이 앞장서겠습니다. 다시 한번 함께해 주신 모든 분께 감사드립니다. 고맙습니다.
I'd like to thank Excellency Minister Han Wajin for this video message, and I think we all agree it's exciting to hear the Republic of Korea's aim to lower PM 2.5 by 30% before 27, and then the advances to date as well, with the comprehensive plan for air quality improvement at the end of 2022 and the first master plan for carbon neutrality and green growth. So thank you very much for the strong commitment in tackling climate and air quality together. And now we turn to the second video with Minister Miki Yamada.
Distinguished participants, good morning. I am Yamada Miki, State Minister of the Environment, Japan. I would like to express my warm gratitude to UNEP and CCAC for jointly hosting the Climate and Clean Air Conference. We are now facing the triple global crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, as well as ongoing global energy crisis. All countries must take concrete actions urgently, leveraging synergies to address these issues. In this context, we believe it very significant and timely that the annual meeting of the CCAC, which contributes not only reduction of SLCPs, but also improvement of air quality, is being held in collaboration with UNEP Air Quality Action Week. In the communique of the C7 ministerial meeting in April, the importance of concrete actions on climate change and air pollution control are highlighted. For example, G7 are committed to enhancing broader cooperation, including regional cooperation on air quality around the world. G7 also highlight the importance of taking progressive actions on methane emission reduction, especially in waste, agriculture, and energy sectors. In addition, G7 highlighted the importance of advancing proper life cycle management of fluorocarbons, in particular, addressing fluorocarbons banks. Japan has been making various efforts to address climate change and air pollution in such current global trend. Japan has been contributing to the Regional Action Program on Air Pollution through the Acid Deposition Monitoring Network in East Asia, or EANET. The network has been creating a common understanding on the state of air pollution and providing useful inputs for decision-making at various levels in the region. In addition, Japan has been promoting the initiative on fluorocarbons life cycle management in close cooperation with the CCAC. We are very glad to contribute the various achievements of the Cooling Hub in its first year, such as the publication and promotion of the resource book for life cycle management of fluorocarbons. Japan joined the Global Methane Pledge in 2021. Japan has been making consistent efforts to reduce methane emissions domestically and internationally. Furthermore, Japan established the fund to the ADB and the UNEP to support a project to introduce methane emission reduction technology using the Joint Crediting Mechanism, or JCM. Japan will continue to work with international community to keep a limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature rise within reach and to address air pollution. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
We very much thank the Honorable Minister for this video message, and we welcome the commitment of the G7 to tackle climate change and air pollution with progressive action on methane in the waste, agriculture and energy sectors. And let me use this opportunity as well to highlight the importance of methane, not only as a potent greenhouse gas with over 80 times the global warming potential of CO2 over 20 years, but also for human health and plant growth as a precursor to tropospheric ozone against the backdrop of air pollution. So I think it's really important to look at this connection again, since we talk about the integration. Japan has long been a leader in supporting regional cooperation and air quality, and we do look forward to the ENET sessions tomorrow afternoon. So watch this space in the program as well. And the CCAC also deeply appreciates the partnership with Japan on the life cycle management of fluorocarbons. And we welcome the discussion that will take place later today in the Cooling Hub session to think about how the CCAC partners can help advance the global cooling pledge being led by the United Arab Emirates for COP28. So with that, we promised a zoom into the growing scientific evidence for action, and we're very, very pleased to have Dr. Chandra Venkataraman at our table up here as well. And she's part of the CCAC Science Advisory Panel. Chandra is the Sopa Dixit Chair, professor at the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay. Her research focuses on the intersection of technology and emissions, climate science, air pollution, and environmental sustainable policy. And her research has contributed to over 100 peer-reviewed publications, a book, 4 patents. And I think the line is very, very long. And with that, please share with us your thoughts. And I think you have a presentation.
So thank you very much, Martina, for this all-too-kind introduction. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and dear delegates, a very good morning to everyone here. Today, I'll speak briefly on the growing scientific evidence for action on short-lived climate pollutants, or SLCPs, which are very important in climate change. So over the last several years, we've had a growing body of evidence that shows the impacts of SLCPs on near-term climate. And this science allows us to evaluate which actions will best reduce these impacts. All right, my clicker works. And so we see that today climate change is led to an increase in global temperatures over 1 degree centigrade. For most part, this is being contributed by carbon dioxide, followed very closely by the 3 blue boxes: methane, hydrofluorocarbons or HFCs, halogenated gases, and black carbon, which is a particulate SLCP, together, which are very strong warming agents and which cause 50% of climate change today. Importantly, SLCPs remain in the atmosphere for much shorter time periods than carbon dioxide. This means if we cut the emissions of SLCPs, we can quickly remove them from the atmosphere and reduce the rates of global warming on the time scales of 2 to 4 decades. Why is this important? we are already experiencing catastrophic effects of climate change, intensified and frequent heat waves, flooding events, loss of sea ice, loss of glacial ice, and various other impacts. Slowing the growth of global warming will slow the intensification of these impacts, and it will give both us as society and nature time to adapt to climate change. Coming to tropospheric ozone, which was mentioned, which is being shown as O3. It's a molecule which is not emitted as such, but rather forms in the atmosphere from the interaction of sunlight on mixtures of methane, organic gases, and the emission of nitrogen oxides from our use of transport, of electricity, and different energy uses. Along with PM 2.5 of fine particles, which can penetrate the deep lung and cause great human health impacts, these are two major players in air pollution. There is overwhelming scientific evidence on the human health impacts of air pollution. There are over 60,000 studies, with many of them published in the last 10 years, that essentially show that exposure to dangerous levels of air pollution worsens the outcomes of ischemic heart disease, of stroke, of a variety of lung diseases, diabetes, and in fact, recent evidence is linking air pollution exposure to anemia, to a low birth weight, and to early birth, to liver diseases, other cancers, and so on. And all of this health damage has a huge places a huge economic cost on societies. So very quickly, black carbon is emitted from combustion, from our use of fossil fuels and biomass fuels for energy, and also from open burning of agricultural waste, forests and grassland. On a 20-year time frame, a stronger climate change agent than CO2 per equivalent mass. As alluded this morning, methane is a very important greenhouse gas emitted largely from human activities of use of natural gas, as well as from agriculture and from livestock production, along with some natural sources of methane. And methane on a 20-year time frame is 84 times more potent a climate change agent than carbon dioxide. Hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, were these gases which essentially are human-made for use in refrigeration, air conditioning, and cooling applications, and they are 100 to 1,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So, to reduce the impacts of SLCP, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition has always relied on scientific evidence. There were two major reports, the integrated report on black carbon and tropospheric ozone, and the Climate and Clean Air Benefits reports of the UNEP in 2011, which in fact underpin the establishment of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. The coalition is a voluntary partnership and with a focus on action. It has over 130 partners and 320 actors that include state government, that include governments, national and subnational, that include various intergovernmental organizations, includes financial institutions and various other civil society organizations, together being committed to reduce the emissions of short-lived climate pollutants. There are many successes of the CCAC. These early reports were followed by other scientific synthesis reports. As alluded to this morning, there are the regional reports on Latin America and the Caribbean. There is the Asia and Pacific report. The Asia and Pacific report showed 25 measures which, if implemented, could move over 1 billion people in Asia from unhealthful air pollution towards the air pollution at the standards of WHO guidelines by 2030. The methane assessment identified 3 different human sectors, which is fossil fuels, agriculture, and waste burning as key to the rising levels of methane. And the Africa assessment provided various sustainable development growth pathways for Africa to continue to grow economically in population and urbanization, and yet maintain or reduce emissions. There are many successes of the CCAC. An important one is the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol introduced the HFCs, or hydrofluorocarbons, as replacement compounds to the ozone depleting substances CFCs, which were causing the ozone hole. However, it was then shown that many HFCs are very, very strong greenhouse gases. And ever since its establishment in 2012, the CCAC has tirelessly campaigned to bring HFCs to the forefront of world governments, and was successful in getting agreement towards signing the Kigali Amendment. The Kigali Amendment will lead to a phase out or removal of 85% of HFC production by 2050, with very, very strong benefits to climate impact. So we follow the green curve below rather than the blue curve of unmitigated or without any actions on HFCs. The Global Methane Pledge is yet another success of the CCAC. It was shown that targeted methane reduction or methane emission reduction measures can reduce about 50% of today's human emissions. Methane is the fastest growing greenhouse gas, and it's extremely important, as well as these are measures that are economically sustainable and can pay for themselves. So it's important for us to act on the methane pledge, where governments have reduced to reduce country level methane emissions towards a global reduction of 30% by 2030. However, despite the methane pledge, methane concentrations in the global atmosphere continue to grow. And so, as is shown, it's extremely important for us to make the turnaround to the green curve of methane reductions, which will keep us in concert with the 1.5 degrees centigrade pathways that will limit catastrophic global warming. And finally, the Clean Air for Blue Skies initiative of the UNEP and the International Day for Clean Air was very recently declared. And this has raised awareness of clean air in terms of not just impacts on human health, but agriculture, the ecosystem, and the economy. Very importantly, the CCAC will be discussing this week the Clean Air Flagship, which is brings about a global voice for solutions to air pollution and to intensify regional cooperation in this regard. We've had many successes, yet we need more rapid and urgent action. The World Meteorological Organization has warned that we might actually breach the 1.5 degree target between 2023 and 2027. Recently, the World Health Organization further reduced air quality guidelines, which basically says that there are no safe levels of air pollution exposure. The science is irrefutable. Cutting SLCP emissions will necessarily bring benefits to climate, to clean air, and to sustainable development. We need to intensify our efforts, to raise our ambition, and with renewed commitment to international cooperation to move forward for short-lived climate pollutant emission reductions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chandra, for this amazing overview, both on the science and the things that are already on the way. These successes that we had, and leaving us with the note that we have to build on them and do more. I think we had a very strong start into this conference with this opening that highlights both the importance of the issues and the integration and the need for partnership. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Dechen Sering, the Director and Representative for Asia Pacific of the UN Environment Programme, for her closing remarks in this opening. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martina. Your Excellency, Mr. Batar Den Bartolzi, Minister of Environment, Government of Mongolia, Her Excellency, Ms. Han Wo-jin, Minister of Environment, Republic of Korea, Her Excellency, Ms. Miki Yamada, State Minister of Environment, Japan, Ms. Amida Salsia Alis-Jabana, Executive Secretary, UNESCAP, Mr. Anuj Mehta, Thailand Country Director, Asian Development Bank, Dr. Chandra Venkataraman, CCAC Science Advisory Panels, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today at the annual meeting of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition 2023 and the Air Quality Action Week. It is an honor to have distinguished guests, experts, partners to this important annual meeting. As you've heard from speakers, the Asia Pacific region finds ourselves at the forefront of the challenges. 7 G20 member states within our region represent over half of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And so we recognize the immense responsibility this region faces in terms of tackling the climate crisis head on. We have the IPCC's recently released synthesis report reinforcing the urgency of our situation. We already know that the world is 1.1 degrees centigrade warmer than pre-industrial times. And the IPCC has laid out what we need to do if we need to avert the worst impacts of climate change. This report highlighted that we actually do have the solutions to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. So we know that with the consequences of both climate change and air pollution, it's already affecting the health and livelihood of people in our communities and placing stress on our already vulnerable ecosystems. We know that pollution is a driver of the loss of biodiversity, and we're looking at losing 1 million species. The UN General Assembly declared last year that every individual on this planet has a right to a clean, healthy, sustainable environment. We know now that our region is at the epicenter of a public health crisis, and we know about 4 billion people are exposed to unhealthy levels of air pollution. When we start to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we know that efforts to reduce urban air pollution has been stagnant since 2015. And we know that exposure to fine particulate matter, PM2.5, will increase by 50% by 2030. And we know that the most vulnerable amongst us, elderly, children, people living in poverty, bear the brunt of air pollution. UNEP did in 2021 regulating air quality. We did a global assessment of air pollution, and we found that 31% of countries globally have legal mechanisms for managing air or addressing transboundary air pollution. At a global level, we still lack an international legal framework on air quality. There have been several frameworks in different regions working on air pollution in the region. And under the SCAP Commission session, we now have resolutions, SCAP resolutions to address air pollution. And the UN Environment Assembly also has resolutions to address air pollution. The World Health Organization has a 2021 air quality guidelines. So we know that countries must comply with these guidelines. So we know that we need robust legislation to establish monitoring, enforcement, public participation processes. We also know that air pollution knows no borders. We know we have the science. We know what works. We know the technology needed. We know the finance. We know capacity building. There is scope to strengthen regional cooperation on air pollution. And last year, the SCAP ministerial, there's a regional action program on air pollution. We know we need to increase investment in air pollution control. And this is an area that's extremely underfunded. Investing in clean air can yield multiple benefits for health, climate, and overall development. So we must join forces to make significant strides towards achieving clean air for all. There has been a lot of monitoring networks in this region. We heard of the Acid Deposition Monitoring Network. That's about 22 years, and it's now expanded its scope to include air pollution. So I hope this week, when you meet, you will collaborate, you will learn from each other, so that we can accelerate action to mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change. At the regional level, our UNEP will organize a regional ministerial forum in October later this year, and this will prepare us for the 6th UN Environment Assembly. We look forward to air pollution highlighted as an important issue at the UN Environment Assembly. In conclusion, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers, partners for the valuable time and experience. I'm confident your contributions will shape our discussions throughout the week, laying the foundation for meaningful progress. We look forward to your collective dedication, collaboration, so we can make a substantial impact, securing the well-being of people today and safeguarding the long-term sustainability of our planet. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dechen. And with that, we have come pretty much to the end of our opening session. As we move through the conference with all the learning, sharing, and networking, let us all focus on the concrete actions we can take and the benefits we can gain from tackling the problem of climate and clean air together. I want to just briefly mention our code of conduct: respect for each other, differences in views, sharing freely in a setting of trust and partnership spirit here. The second point that I wanted to mention is you've seen the banner coming up again and again, and it was actually the one as well that greeted you at the entrance, the banner for this event. And throughout, you'll see this. It's artwork that was created by a graphic artist here in Bangkok based, and it represents things that she, and actually we all, should be able to do outside but can't in places with dirty air. So that's running with children, taking grandparents for a stroll, playing sports, and even just going for a walk. It also represents what the future could look like. And in many places around the world, if we continue this vital work, clean cities where people can breathe freely in their daily lives. So I want to leave us with that thought to inspire us a little bit. Please follow us on social media. We have created some tags here as well. And the last is a group photo. We will have a first photo with just us here. So please stay in the room because we would love to do a photo with all of you. So that will be our family photo for the conference. So hold your breath before we can go out. We want to do that. This will be followed by a coffee, a morning coffee and networking, and we'll continue with the sessions right after. And I'd really like to thank you all up here. Thank you for coming. Thanks to the interpreters who are doing a fantastic job, Spanish, French, and English. And yeah, thank you to our distinguished speakers here. And with that, we stop here and we take the photos. Thank you.
Hi, if everyone can please remain in their seats, we're going to take a group photo of the speakers, and then we're going to have everyone come up here, and we'll take a group photo of all of you. Thank you very much.
Cool. Okay, so now we can all please come up here. There's a little podium where we can all stand and we'll take the photo of the entire group.
All right, if everyone can please make their way to the rostrum, thank you. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello, can you guys hear me? Guys here? Yes. Yes, it's good. Thumbs up, Martina. I can see that.
They can be at the back as well.
Yeah, can we get more people towards the back? Can we get more people towards the back? Because you guys, there's a lot of people on the sides. Can the people on the sides go towards the back? No? Thank you. Yep. Jesus. Oh my God.
May we please call on Mr. Subel Bandari to come up to the stage? Thank you. May I invite Mr. Subel Bandari to please introduce yourself and come up the stage? Thank you.
held thingy. Is this working? Okay, now fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could all come back into the room and take your seats, there will be more opportunities to have informal discussions, I promise. So I'd like to welcome you back now to this first substantive session after the opening. It's entitled Advancing Mitigation Through Integrated Planning on Climate and Clean Air. And integrated planning did come out quite a bit already in this opening as a key factor. It is also the CCAC's bread and butter. And we have supported a lot of countries over the years in this, together with the help of our implementing partners. And as we keep referring to the fact that it makes sense from a science perspective, from a sector perspective, and also tactically, given shifting political priorities that we all are aware, that we have those. I keep calling it, we have 2 feet and we run on 2 feet, right? So it's climate and clean air. Now, the CCAC has a hub on planning, and that's a bit the start of the whole process in the CCAC, how we provide support in our theory of change. It's really a starting point to look at planning. And I will stop at that because it will come out how important that is. It will come out through the entire session now. And I would like to turn to a country perspective now as well, with the opening remarks by Mrs. Gita Sabharwal. She's UN Resident Coordinator for Thailand. And please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Distinguished experts, colleagues, friends, and co-panelists. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to one of the most pressing issues that faces us here in Thailand, the region, and the world. Air pollution is an existential threat as it impacts the climate, environment, and human health alike. Short-lived climate pollutants, including black carbon, a component of PM 2.5, and methane, drive up 45% of global warming. In Thailand, as elsewhere, the main causes of air pollution vary by region and location. They include a wide range of sources, from heavy industries, fossil fuel powered plants to construction sites and vehicle emissions. A particular serious problem in this region is the seasonal burning of agricultural crop residue, as we saw earlier this year. And I'm going to speak to this in particular. Such open burning of biomass is a significant contributor to carbon emissions, and it can lead to forest fires, jeopardizing fragile ecosystems. The health impacts are just as significant. Each year, some 30,000 people in Thailand die of causes directly attributable to prolonged exposure to air pollution. This year alone, between January and March, tens of thousands of people suffered air pollution-related illnesses in Chiang Mai and other provinces up in the north. In the north, where the practice is more common and compounded by forest fires, there has been a higher rate of lung cancer and complications in women's maternal health as compared to the southern part of the country. The social costs caused by PM 2.5 amount to an estimated $63 billion each year. This cost will only rise unless decisive actions are taken. I have visited several provinces where rice is the main crop for many of the small farm holders. Farmers tell me they burn crop residues because they lack the financial means to adopt technologies to prepare their plots in time for the next plowing season. Farmers in Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia engage in similar practices out of necessity. Yet, airborne pollutants know no borders, which means that eliminating this practice will require cross-border collaboration. All of us, including the governments, academia, private sector, and civil society, will need to work together, finding sustainable and market-oriented solutions in the context of South-South triangular cooperation. These solutions will need to be tailored to the needs of farmers without burdening them with additional costs. We at the UN are working with partners in Thailand on effective ways to reduce crop burning and other sources of air pollution. Allow me to highlight 4 of them in particular. 1, the UN is generating the evidence base for science-based solutions. CCAC is analyzing satellite imagery to understand the patterns of biomass burning and other sources of hazardous smoke. CCAC also analyzes the contribution of specific crops to air pollution using chemical fingerprinting of smoke. With this in-depth analysis, we can better track crop burning and locate its exact geographical position while mapping weather patterns to predict the movement of smoke across the country and the region. Due to the different sources of air pollution, solutions will need to be tailored to suit specific circumstances, including farmlands, crops, and areas. For example, in the northeastern part of Thailand, we need to take into account the region's limited water supplies as we work on these locally tailored solutions. 2, the UN, led by UNEP, FAO, and UNDP, leverages science towards introducing climate-smart farming practices and technologies. For example, as you all are aware of, deep plowing can be used to dispose leftover rice stalks. Once buried this way into the soil, they decompose into nutrients. Another method involves cost-effective decomposers that can break down organic material within a couple of weeks. Similarly, sustainable practice involves using agricultural biomass for mulching. 3, the UN is building technical capacities across Thailand and the region to analyze and create data banks to support policymakers. We are increasing the number of air quality monitoring stations around the country. We are also providing technical support to build capacities to assess and utilize satellite, atmospheric data, and applications for air pollution monitoring and management. As part of this process, UN is supporting cities, including Chiang Mai and Nakhon Ratchasima, to develop science-based action plans to address local sources of air pollution. Cities can better address challenges to their air quality when they have both the capacity to gather relevant data and the tools to enact scientifically sound solutions. It has also been found that machine learning technology can be used to support decision-making to improve air quality. 4, the UN leverages its convening power to co-create platforms for dialogue with the private sector to scale up market-led solutions. We know from experience that once best practices and latest technologies are introduced, the private sector is quick to adopt and scale them up at their own accord. The UN is in dialogue with the rice, sugarcane, and maize producers through the Global Compact Network Thailand to create the right incentives for farmers to move away from burning, organize smallholders to share resources using harvesters and other machinery, and leverage technology in support of biomass electricity and biofuels. Today's conference serves as an important platform to take this agenda forward in Thailand and across the region. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from my co-panelists their insights as we continue to work towards cleaning up our air and saving our planet from future warming. Thank you very much, and Khap Khun Kha.
Thank you very much, Gita. Very, very clear expose of the importance of planning, integrated planning, at the country level. I think it was very well chosen. Thank you for this example, because everybody has on the radar industry and transport, if you talk about air pollution. And a lot of times we don't first think about agriculture, but not only here, but I was surprised. I'm based in Paris. In Paris, the pollution peaks in the city do come when further up north there's agricultural burning happening. So don't think it's only limited to one region. It's everywhere. And it's something that we don't think of immediately. And obviously the farmers don't get up in the morning, oh, how can I harm the environment? No, they're very dependent on it and they know it. But it is, how can we help them to change practices? And I think it's really interesting to see that. Cooperation across ministries, cooperation across the UN agencies representing those subject areas. I think it's really, really clear what you said. And then the cooperation in terms of multi-level governance between the national, the central governments and the local governments, looking at the different jurisdictions. So I wanted to hold these thoughts, why again, integrated planning is so important. With that, I'd like to move, to our next presentation. I promised in the opening statement, we have two reports that are being launched during this week. One of them is the Clean Air and Climate Solutions for ASEAN. And we will have the pleasure of listening to Dr. Eric Süßmann. He's a senior climate policy researcher at IGES, and he's also a member of the CCAC Scientific Advisory Panel. And he'll present to us key messages from the CCAC-funded ASEAN report. And I don't want to occupy the space any further, and we swap spots. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Okay, all right. So I'd like to start by presenting an overview of this new report that we are releasing on clean air and climate solutions in ASEAN. This report is been developed over the past few years with collaboration from colleagues at YASA and SEI and the support of UNEP and the CCAC. If I can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the starting point for this report is basically, as we've heard from many different people, the ASEAN region faces two significant crises, an air pollution crisis and a climate change crisis. And I would suggest that these crises also have big development impacts on other priorities, such as the health of children, the health of women, many of the different SDGs. Further, these crises are often interrelated. They come from frequently similar sources. And therefore, if we take integrated solutions to these crises, we can save money, time, and lives. And I realized, thank you very much. And so we've developed a report. This is actually a follow-up to a previous report on air pollution in Asia Pacific that you've heard about, called Science-Based Solutions, that was released 4 years ago. This new report, I believe, is the first time that the CCAC is looking at these type of solutions at a sub-regional level, which opens obviously opportunities for cooperation across the region and also for learning and peer exchange across different countries. I want to highlight that this report is, coming out after a few years of development, but as I reflected upon this presentation, I seem to recall the first time we actually talked about SLCPs was almost a decade ago in ASEAN. And I think we have seen a lot of progress on these issues, but there's also more scope to do more. And so I'm going to highlight some of the areas where there's scope to do more. Can I go to the next slide too? Okay, so what we've identified with the help of Zig Climont and colleagues at YASA using the GAINS model is a set of 15 different solutions. These 15 different solutions to some extent overlap with the 25 solutions from the previous Asia Solutions report, but there's a much stronger sub-regional focus. There's also some updating on some of the impacts, for instance, on things like waste management and also nutrition and food. And what's very interesting about these 15 different solutions is for many of them, there's already legislation on the books, but there's tremendous scope for strengthening implementation of that legislation. So one of our main messages coming out of the report is It's good that we have legislation on the books, but we need to strengthen implementation of existing legislation and then also cover some of these newer areas, for instance, like nutrition, maybe making links over to things like circular economy and what have you. Okay, can I go to the next slide, please? The other important thing, another key take-home message from this report is if we implement these 15 solutions effectively throughout the region, we're going to bring the region much, much closer to the most recent WHO guidelines, closer to about 10 micrograms per cubic meter across the region. And also, this would lead to a result where we'd have moving from 80 million people who are breathing quote unquote clean air to 250 million people that are breathing clean air in the region. So these are huge monumental impacts. And this also underlines the importance of taking action and strengthening implementation. Can I go to the next slide, please? Now, the other thing that's very interesting about the report is while we do develop sort of an overview of what needs to be done at the regional level, we also have some implications for different countries. And so this slide gives you a sense that across the region, there is some variation in what the impacts of these different solutions might be. And some of those impacts, understandably, might vary by the populations of different countries. But the same point that I want to underline from previous slide is across the region, stronger implementation of existing measures and the inclusion of some of these newer measures would bring most of the countries much closer to WHO guidelines and then dramatically improve the health and well-being of the citizens in those countries. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, another key take-home point, and this is, the Climate Change and Clean Air Coalition, is that these solutions are not only good for air quality. For many countries in Asia, that might be the entry point. That might be where they want to start. But for many of these solutions, there are significant knock-on effects for climate change as well. And so the report also underlines that, for instance, effective implementation of these solutions from 2015 to 2030 would lead to about a 70% reduction in black carbon. Similarly, successful implementation of these solutions by 2030 would lead to about a 40% reduction in methane. Not featured on this slide, but also highlighted in the report, is there's also potential to reduce about 25% of HFC emissions and similar amount of CO2 emissions. So once again, to put a very nice packaging on it, there are significant and multiple benefits from implementing these 15 solutions in ASEAN. Now, I'd like to go to the next slide where we actually talk about some of the implementation experiences. So the first chapter of the report sort of sets up this case. As we move into the second and third chapters, we talk about some of the actual experiences in the region. And one of the things I want to highlight is there has been successful implementation of many of the different solutions. So some of these success cases range from, for instance, we're here in Bangkok right now, and I'm not sure if my colleague, Mr. Itipol from PCD, is in the audience, but he and his colleagues have worked very, very hard in trying to improve and reduce diesel emissions, especially from public transportation vehicles, and also working on inspection and maintenance programs. So the Thailand case and the Bangkok case are very interesting cases that could potentially be shared throughout the region. Another set of interesting cases which we highlight involves clean cook stoves. And so here we underline some of the successful work that's been done in Lao PDR to spread improved cook stoves and then also facilitate a transition in some cases to electricity. And the interesting thing, for instance, in the case of the Lao PDR example, is some of these programs have also put a very strong emphasis on the gender dimensions of sustainable development. For instance, empowering women to come into the production, manufacturing, and sales of these clean cook stoves. So once again, there's a multiple set of benefits that are out there to be achieved, and some of these are actually already being achieved. But I think one of the things we really need to do is not only put a spotlight on these different benefits, but bring together the different coalitions of actors, both within and outside of government, to create a strong political economy case for driving change. So this might include actors such as the Lao Women's Union and the Ministry of Transportation in Thailand. Some of these actors that might not traditionally care about air quality, but when they see these benefits, it can join together and hold hands with some of the key actors in this space can really drive transformative change. And this gets me to my last slide. So my last slide really deals with how we can facilitate and how we can build regional cooperation to help implement some of these solutions. And so along with colleagues from Stockholm Environment Institute, we interviewed about 20 different policymakers and experts around the region, try to understand how we can strengthen regional cooperation on SLCPs and the 15 different solutions. And the results of those interviews sort of underline 4 different areas that we can work on the regional level, and maybe starting out with a set of 3 different champion countries. So for instance, Thailand right now is going through the SNAP process and will launch their SNAP report at this meeting. Cambodia has already released their Clean Air Act that has SLCPs embedded within it. And the Philippines is going to be embarking on a SNAP process. These might be a good set of 3 champion countries to promote these 4 different areas. And the 4 different areas are analytical tools, so promoting things like the LEAP IBC tool, both at the national and potentially at the local level, mobilizing finance. So we already heard from our colleagues at the ADB that they're unlocking new sources of finance, for instance, through their Blue Skies program. We've also heard of things like the JCM, which is brought to you by Japan, where there are different co-benefits with climate change. So unlocking that finance, especially for pilot projects. And that gets me to the 3rd area, the pilot projects or the key solutions themselves. So there are 15 different solutions. Many of these overlap nicely with the different hubs from the CCAC. And I think there's ample space to demonstrate some of these solutions, but also then to pour some of the finance on top of them and integrate them into policymaking processes that are developed by these analytical tools will help bring together many of the key elements that will drive transformative change. And now I'm going to expose some of my age here. I just turned 50 this year, and I cannot read the bottom box. Can somebody help me out? What is the 4th box there?
Project funding, help secure funding for tangible demonstration projects.
Okay, so actually I already said that. Let me take a quick look. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and the last one is policy integration. So this is partially about using the tools, but it's also about setting up processes where we bring in some of these solutions, especially into our NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. I would also argue it's important to think a little bit more broadly about bringing them into MBSAPs. These are the action plans that countries are developing in response to the biodiversity agreement, as well as our voluntary national reviews. These are our SDG plans. So bringing those solutions into those different plans will help strengthen support, both in terms of finance, but also help drive political support for some of these actions. So collectively, we suggest that there should be regional support program led by 3 champion countries on these 4 different areas to help drive implementation of these 15 different solutions. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. I'm in the same club. That's why I have my glasses on. But now we have 2 subsequent panel discussions. And I think this has been stellar introduced by our 2 first speakers. And the first panel will be focusing on the Asia Pacific region, and the second will bring together examples from Latin America and from Africa. And with that, I would like to hand over to the moderator, and that is Linda Baterina. She's the Deputy Executive Director of Clean Air Asia, and she will introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina, and congratulations on the launch of the Clean Air and Climate Solutions for ASEAN report. We are now in the panel session where we're going to discuss how to advance mitigation through integrated planning on climate and clean air. I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists, Dr. Masood Iqbal Muhammad Shamim, Director of the Department of Environment of Bangladesh, Miss Maria Gerarda Asuncion, Gigi, as we fondly call her, Mirilo, from the Environmental Management Bureau of the Philippines, and Dr. In Chang Huang, Research Fellow from the Seoul Institute, Mr. Makoto Kato, Member of the Board of Directors, General Manager, principal researcher from the Overseas Environmental Cooperation Center of Japan. And last but not the least, Mr. Chris Molly, Senior Research Fellow of the Stockholm Environment Institute. Our panel is going to focus on how we can take the lessons from the assessment report into action, which is the focus of our conference today. And we will be speaking broadly, not just about the ASEAN region, but also how the Asia-Pacific region could move the needle towards achieving clean air and climate goals. Dr. Masood, how can integrated assessments advance SLCP mitigation in Asian countries that face the dual threats of air pollution and climate change, like your country, Bangladesh?
Thank you, Binda. And good morning, gentlemen. And like many other South Asian countries, air pollution is a major problem in Bangladesh. You might notice that our capital city, Dhaka, and our neighboring countries, always there is a competition in terms of air pollution. And as well as Bangladesh is also one of the most vulnerable countries to the climate change. For in that case, this SLCP approach that is brought about by the CCAC was very important for Bangladesh, and Bangladesh became one of the founding members of the CCAC. And we really took this issue very seriously, and we joined in 2014. First time to develop the national action plan on SLCP, and this was again was updated in 2018. This SLCP action plan. The idea was to prioritize and identify and prioritize the actions that is necessary to reduce the SLCP. And we got fund from the CCAC and also technical support from the Stockholm Environmental Institute for developing this SLCP National Action Plan. And in the SLCP, we basically prioritize the black carbon and as well as the methane. From the black and the NEP, we prioritize 11 priorities and 6 for the BC, black carbon reduction, and 5 for the methane reduction. And during the time, we also this action plan really also actually catalyze to take plans, take rules and regulation in other sector as well, because like many other countries, actually for the climate change expertise and the climate change policymakers, they always think about the GHG emissions, GHG mitigation, something like that. And for the air pollution group, air pollution expert, they not only think about the black carbon, they also think about the other gaseous emission like SOx and NOx and other heavy metals as well. But SLCP is a hybrid option that you can address the both. So although at the initial stages there is not much awareness among the policymakers, but after this NEP program, there is a awareness among the policymakers and those who are the core climate people. They also understood the importance of the reducing the SLCP, addressing these issues, and following this action plan. We have now many development like. Actually, that started after the first SLCP national plan, like Bangladesh action plan for the clean stoves, like renewable energy and energy efficiency program. And after the second SLCP NEP, then we have now new air pollution control rules that is published very recently. And also, for the NDC, and after this SLCP action plan, this updated NDC, this SLCP issues also introduced. So it's a kind of achievement, I should say. And also some of the information that we generated during our assessment in the second SLCP national plan. There's some information, especially the methane related information, is also included in the third national communication. So in that case, really we should say we are benefiting both the issues related to the air pollution control and as well as the climate change issues. So it's really a big opportunity for us to address the both issue through the concept of the SLCP. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Masood. It's wonderful to hear how the integrated planning process allowed sectoral agencies in Bangladesh to work together, and which actually resulted in programs on the ground. And now, as you mentioned, the NDCs has been informed by SLCP and methane mitigation actions. So wonderful. Thank you for sharing that experience. Now we move on to a country in the ASEAN, of which I am from, the Philippines. Ms. Gigi Murillo, could you please speak on how a country like the Philippines, considered among the most climate vulnerable in the region, and in 2017-2018, found by the Health Effects Institute Global State of the Air Report among the top 10 countries affected by air pollution in terms of mortality, how could the Philippines use the assessment to advance climate and clean air action?
Thank you very much, Ms. Glinda. Good morning, everyone. So from the perspectives of the Philippines, we would like to focus on we would like to build from the usefulness of the assessment as applied in three ways. First is prioritization. Second is on the strengthening of our policies. And third is for the integration and harmonization. So first, when we speak of prioritization, we see that the assessment report narrows down the most important sectors and actions that we need to prioritize, which is really indeed very helpful in our decision making, in identifying areas for funding, as well as for their effective implementation. So although not all the measures mentioned in the report are applicable to our country, but since they were tailored fit or they were customized for the ASEAN region, we see that the assessment report fits our purpose. And second, we see that the assessment report could be useful in strengthening of our policies and decision making, because our current administration is very much rooted in science and evidence-based measures, which fortunately are offered and supported by the assessment. So we see that the assessment report offers a great foundation to strengthening our policies. And third, when we speak of integration and harmonization, we would like to see the harmonization of our policies in air quality, climate change, and in energy. So the assessment provides for the urgent call for the integration of our policies to gain more benefits for our economy, society, and most especially for health. And of course, we are also looking into the integration of the assessment into the Sustainable Development Goals, into our national economic plan, the Philippine Development Plan, as well as our NDCs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. It is indeed really, I'm feeling very optimistic about the direction that the Philippines is taking, especially in your last, in the last part of your intervention, where you mentioned the need that the assessment could be used for harmonizing the many different policies, including the Philippine Development Plan. Thank you. And we move now to Seoul. So I'd like to ask. I think let's just going in the order that we have the panelists here. So I'd like to ask Mr. Makoto Kato, representing the OECC in Japan. So the OECC is really a hub of a wide range of activities on international cooperation for sustainable development. Regional and international cooperation has been identified in the ASEAN Assessment Report as essential if we are to move the needle to greater action on clean air and climate. May I respectfully request you to speak on the programs of the OECC and Japan to help developing countries in the region achieve their clean air and climate mitigation targets?
Thank you, Madam Co-Facilitator. Good morning, friends and colleagues. My name is Makoto Kato. I am multiple hat. I have a multiple hat for today's meeting, but I am also requested to present for the initiative by the government of Japan, including for the initiative on fluorocarbons life cycle management. Which has been initiated by the government of Japan and other 14 governments and international organizations, including the CCAC. So for this, I would like to thank the CCAC Secretariat for Martina and colleagues for supporting our activities. So I would like to include for the IFL activities and other initiatives driven by the government of Japan and international partners. As my State Minister of the Environment this morning, Her Excellency Ms. Yamada mentioned, the cooling sector offers tremendous potential for greenhouse gas reduction through driving energy efficiency with high efficient refrigerator and air conditioners, as well as shifting to natural and low GWP refrigerants. And also in response to the bank issue, namely, the bank is refrigerants were already used and stored in the cooling equipment by collecting, recycling and reducing, destroying these gases. This provides additional venue to reduce powerful greenhouse gas such as HFCs. In this connection, in regards to the bank issue, as of today, many our developing country partners have not yet taken or unable to take on action to legislate mandatory fluorocarbons collection at the disposal or of cooling appliances, so that fluorocarbons trapped or in those atmosphere. Essentially, many of the developing countries, these developing countries are already making efforts towards the HFC reduction, production reduction phase out under the Kigali amendment of the Montreal Protocol. So we would like to actually increase their efforts if, for example, countries start working on life cycle management addressing HFC banks. This can provide additional opportunity for them to set and achieve ambitious NDC implementation. Regarding with the clean air and climate solutions for ASEAN, first, I would like to congratulate my old friend Eric for delivering a very meaningful report. As pointed out in this report, Japan has been working with Asian partners and also non-Asian partners in many areas, including for air pollution and fluorocarbons management, especially for the fluorocarbons management and air pollutions control. We seriously focus on the delivery of co-benefits such as technology transfer and deployment, green job creation, and other additional financial mobilizations. We also believe the scientific findings should be translated into the policy planning and development, so that we would like to support through multiple opportunities, including IFL and others. We would like to drive for the realization of this scientific findings and also solution proposals into actual implementation of the solutions. In addition to the cooperation at the legislation planning at the national level, we have been working with the local government in Asia through city-to-city collaboration programs. This is including for the Osaka city and Quezon city in the Philippines, and also here in Bangkok, where we have been working through Yokohama city in Japan, and also the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. So I think this has also untapped a great opportunity for us to drive co-benefits for reducing SLCP, including HFCs and air pollution substances. So we would like to keep driving our efforts in Asia and other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Makoto Kato. And now we move to Dr. In Chang Huang from the Seoul Institute, which was established by the Seoul Metropolitan Government with the role of recommending policies to enhance the quality of life in Seoul. Dr. Huang, how can cities take the key messages from the assessment to guide much needed action for clean air and climate in the Asia and the Pacific region?
Thank you, Golinda. And thank you very much, Dr. Eric Jusman, for the wonderful presentation. And thank you very much for inviting me to this important session. ASEAN is a very important region in the world in terms of the magnitude of environmental change and the size of the economy. I hope this report becomes a milestone for the ASEAN countries to advance their actions to reduce carbon and air pollutant emissions simultaneously. Research institutes and professionals in Korea have started to emphasize the importance of an integrated approach, and they have started to propose strategies and measures for integration at a sectoral level, such as transport or building sector. However, the integrated approach has not been explicitly incorporated in air quality action plans or in carbon neutrality action plans yet. That means we have a long way to go. I would like to give you an example signifying the importance of an integrated approach. This is a kind of lessons learned from Korea over the last 2 decades. Since the late 2000s, the Korean government had made an effort with economic incentives to increase the share of a so-called clean diesel vehicle as an option for green growth. But as you know, it turned out that the clean diesel vehicle is not as clean as argued by the manufacturers. In fact, diesel cars deployed a lot have become one of the top PM2.5 emitters in a metropolitan area of Seoul, Korea. On top of that, a significant amount of money has been spent for addressing emissions from diesel cars through a subsidy program for post-processing equipment, such as diesel particulate filters. We can learn from this experience. A lack of rigorous consideration on the side effect of a specific measure may lead to a severe adverse impact. A well-structured, science-based decision-making is very important for reaping co-benefits from a policy measure. This implies that the integrated assessment approach can play a significant role. What should we do? First and foremost, we need to develop tools for integrated assessment to improve the common knowledge basis. Then we need to make an effort to find a suitable measure for reaping co-benefits, considering national or sub-regional context. Finally, mainstreaming by means of legalization and funding resources are necessary for the effective implementation of the selected policy measures. Let me give you a small example. The city of Seoul is implementing low-emission zone program for the road transport sector and a pilot program for building emissions cap. For the design of its program, a simplified version of the integrated assessment has been conducted. In addition, an integrated assessment model of climate, air pollution, waste, and the economy is currently under development. Once developed, the model will be used for the evaluation of a policy measure. The Korean government recently mandated that every government program should be evaluated from the perspective of carbon emissions. This is a kind of green budgeting scheme initiated by OECD and the EU countries. This is a good starting point for setting a rule to allocate financial resources based on carbon emissions or on environmental impacts. There's a long way to go, but a small first step is very important. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Huang. Last but not the least, I'd like to ask a few questions from you, Chris. Chris Molly from the Stockholm Environment Institute. So SEI, together with partners like Clean Air Asia, have worked with governments, including Pakistan, on integrated SLCP national action planning. Could you relate to us what concrete steps countries are taking and can take to move from assessment and planning to action? And could you also speak about the role that private sector plays in taking action on air pollution and climate change alongside the governments, based on CCAC and SEI's cooperation with the World Economic Forum on working with the private sector?
Thank you very much, Glinda. And what's so exciting about hearing about the report that Dr. Eric outlined is that from a national planning perspective, the 4 recommendations as to how to realize the benefits in that report are being implemented somewhere. The people in this room are those who have gotten the furthest in making those recommendations a reality in their countries. To take one specific example that Dr. Eric mentioned that links to national planning is how countries have integrated short-lived climate pollutants into their NDCs. The CCAC has precipitated a step change in how countries include air pollutants and short-lived climate pollutants in their NDCs. Between the Paris Agreement being signed and now, the number of countries that have included air pollution and short-lived climate pollutants as a non-negotiable part of achieving their NDCs has more than doubled. And what does this mean in practice? It means that we better understand the stakes in implementing NDCs. It's important that we take action on climate change, but Nigeria, for example, stating that 30,000 fewer Nigerians will die if their NDC is implemented is to me a more powerful argument as why we should be taking the actions included in Nigeria's NDC. We also see that in including air pollutants and short-lived climate pollutants in NDCs, we have targets that are unmistakably and unashamedly about improving human health. In Mexico, Colombia, and Chile, we have targets to reduce black carbon emissions alongside ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gases, ensuring that the NDCs put a focus not only on climate change mitigation, but doing so while improving the health of their populations. And it also helps to encourage and precipitate new government policy. In 2021, Pakistan's updated NDC stated that the achievement of this NDC would be achieved in part through the development of a new clean air plan. In March of this year, the cabinet in Pakistan approved their first clean air policy, which was based on evidence produced from a CCAC assessment that highlighted the top 5 air pollutant emission sources in Pakistan and led to the policy including specific measures, including limiting agricultural residue burning, which we've heard about, to achieve that policy or plan. I think the challenge that we now have is turning that national planning into implementation of policies and measures. If we don't do so, these plans will just be a catalogue of the tragedies that could occur from not implementing these plans. And so I think that's the step change that we now need to achieve. And to try and be specific, I think there's 3 things that we could focus on over the next year to try and move from planning to implementation. The first is that in 2024, all countries will have to submit their first biennial transparency reports.
This is a huge opportunity to include air pollutants and short-lived climate pollutants within reporting to the UNFCCC. It's the most efficient and effective way for governments to be able to track progress on air pollutants and short-lived climate pollutants, because we can use the frameworks and the data collection methods that are being used already for greenhouse gases. The second is budget tagging. We hear a lot about international finance, but I think in the Philippines and in other countries that we've been hearing about, they are specifically tagging budgets where they have national budgets where they have climate change specific projects. I think within that budget tagging, we need to make sure that SLCPs and air pollutants are a feature of it. And to finally come to the private sector, I think there are a few ways in which the private sector can engage with the work that the CCAC has been doing on integrated air pollution and climate change planning. The first is understanding that the contribution that businesses make to air pollutants and short-lived climate pollutant emissions. And the CCAC, along with SEI and IKEA, last year launched a guide as to how businesses can quantify air pollutant emissions across their value chains. And through the World Economic Forum's Alliance for Clean Air, 5 multinational global businesses have quantified their air pollutant emissions, with more on the way. And the second way is then understanding what contribution businesses can make to achieving national air pollution and climate change targets. There's been little work in understanding what contribution to NDCs the private sector can make. If we can understand how companies' plans and strategies can make a contribution to NDCs, then we can get further along that pathway to implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for such powerful statements. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank the panel for giving us very clear messages that the science, the evidence is clear and robust, that the different sectors, like the development banks, are coming up with financing. The financing is there. We have the different actions that are mentioned in the assessment report. What we need is action, and action needs to happen now. Thank you. A big round of applause to our panelists, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And I promise we'll have 2 panels in this session. So I'd like to ask our second set of panelists to join us while we thank our first set of panelists and see them depart from the stage. So we have Mrs. Camila Labarca, coordinator of the National GHG Inventory System of Chile. We have Mr. Sergio Sanchez, senior policy director. And I think I should say with that for the Global Clean Air Initiative, right, at EDF. We have John Chugulu, Inspector Number 1, GMP and CCAC Focal Point of Cameroon. We have Mr. Abdel Ali Dakina, CCAC National Expert and Coordinator from Morocco. And we have Mrs. Sela Okot, Acting Senior Principal Compliance Officer and Head of Air Quality and Controlled Substances from the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, in Kenya. I think that's where we are, and I don't see everybody coming up. Please join. Oh, yeah. Everybody is coming up, and I switch position as well. Okay. You for being with us. And now we look into, well, a mixed picture from Africa and from Latin America, and maybe get us started with our 2 representatives from the Latin American region. And stating maybe as well, I mean, the amazing experience. I mean, what has happened in Chile over the years. I mean, you've been with us for a very long time in the CCAC. A lot has happened. Reflection in the NDCs. I think that's a topic that comes through on and on again. How has the LAC assessment helped advance climate and clean air action well, in the country and in the region. Maybe I stop with you and then I
Thank you,
turn over to
Martina.
Sergio.
Hello, everyone. So for us, it has been very clear that political commitment has come with better and more information. And the Latin American assessment has helped us on showing us where we have to move forward with this better information. So, for example, in 2015, we have our tentative NDC, and in there we recognized the importance of SLCPs. But then by 2020, we had a black carbon inventory, which we didn't have before. And with this, we were able to have a specific goal for black carbon in our NDC. And then later in 2021, we did our long-term climate strategy. And within this strategy, we had black carbon projections with similar scenarios as the LAC assessment. So with a scenario with only measures for GHG and additional measures for black carbon. And also we include a mortality assessment on how we will reduce mortality with these additional measures. And then in 2022, we have a strengthening of our NDC, which was based also on projections for the methane emissions specifically. And with this projection, we were able to have a specific goal for methane in our strengthening of our NDC. So it has come together, this new information with political commitments. And lastly, last year, we had our climate change law published. And in the Article 1 of this law, the objective of this law is to the development with low GHG emission and climate forces. So in our law, for example, for each region has to develop action plans. And in the inventory for each region, it has to include GHG, but also short-lived climate pollutants. And also in the voluntary certification system, we also include these short-lived climate pollutants. So in every aspect that we are working with GHG, with the law, we include also climate short pollutants. So it has been a very, we have a lot to work from now because we haven't included it yet in all of them. But just to close, with this better information, we have more commitments, but we need still flexibility because information changes a lot as we advance. So specific measures must be flexible, but the goals and the ambitions has to stay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. And there's a big lesson learned in that as well. Thank you. And we hold that thought. Maybe we can come back to it as we go along. Sergio, you're not working only on this from an EDF perspective right now. I want to recognize your long-term engagement in the CCAC, also with your previous head on as the former Undersecretary for Environmental Protection at Semarnat in Mexico. So you have a Mexican experience to this, a country experience. Floor over to you, how the LAC assessment has helped to advance the action.
Thank you, Martina. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And since this is the first time I participate, I would like to thank Martina and the CCAC and the UNEP teams for inviting us to this meeting. And this is a very important occasion to me. It has a lot of personal meaning because it was in 1993 when a group of professionals from the Pacific Rim came together at that time to Indonesia, to Jakarta, to present a report about what's happening in those years, in the early 90s, about air pollution, the programs that were being built there. And I had a chance to meet Dr. Supat, who I understand is going to be in the next few days here. And I am saying that because I would like to highlight that regional and interregional cooperation are not new, but need to be expanded and translated into scale action by learning from the experience that we have been generating all over these years. After these efforts, there were also networks generated, Glinda and Corny, Sophie Punte with Cleaner Asia, and similar efforts in Latin America. So progress in some Black cities, in some Black countries have happened. There have been very important. Some cities have been really able to reduce significantly air pollution. And it's also very important to understand and learn from these cities. However, the problem has expanded. We need to acknowledge. Martina has highlighted that we are progressing, but we are progressing very slowly. And serious problems remain that oblige us to be more effective in the efforts we are doing. And if health protection is not good enough to do something about the environment, let's also work in demonstrating we can contribute to mitigate climate change. There has been significant progress in some Latin American countries, such as Mexico, Chile, and Colombia, as it has been said in each of these three countries, and it was highlighted in the previous panel. The countries have started to incorporate short-lived climate pollutants goals as part of their NDCs, and are also incorporating tools and information in order to start making a more integrated air quality management planning with health and climate objectives. I could refer to different cases in Latin America, such as Medellin in Colombia, in which a recent air quality management plan was announced that demonstrates that while significantly reducing air pollution at the city level, it is also possible to achieve a significant reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions and short-lived climate pollutants that the region is obliged to do. I would like to bring some good news from Latin America. There has been a decision from the Forum of Ministers of Environment from the region to strengthen action, cooperation action across the region. Regional action plan under the leadership of UNEP has been produced, as well as a resource mobilization strategy. And Environmental Defense Fund, the organization with whom I am proud to work with right now, has signed a memorandum of understanding to work with UNEP in implementing this regional action plan. The regional action plan sets forth objectives, goals, strategies to strengthen regional collaboration across the region, including 33 countries all over the Latin America and the Caribbean regions. Specifically, we started by organizing a workshop last year, and we focused precisely on how to assess with both health and climate objectives. We got participation from all over the region, about 200 participants who not just participated in the workshop, but also provided the opportunities, obstacles, needs in order to advance towards the progress in implementing an integrated air quality management approach. Then we are very proud also to be working with the CCAC. We this year, just a couple of months ago, we organized a second workshop in which the major purpose was to identify project profiles that could serve as the starting point to integrate a package of projects and actions that could be subject to, on one side, technical assistance, to transfer tools information and direct technical support, but also that could serve as a platform, that could serve as a package of specific measures that could be attractive to potential donors, either philanthropic or bilateral or multilateral. In these days, by the way, on Wednesday, you are invited to participate in our session in which we are going to introduce which projects were identified, which countries proposed them, and what is the potential of these projects to really advance, not just in the discussion and the development of capacities, but in the actual demonstration that this approach is not just possible, but necessary to move forward. Also, I have been asked to respond about the global cleaner action. I really think it is very important, not just the global assessment of cleaner action and its chapter for Latin America, but also the report on regulating air pollution, the first global assessment of air pollution legislation. Both are being very useful as inputs to strengthen the benchmarking to support the scaling of cleaner actions in Latin America and elsewhere. In EDF, we firmly believe that overviewing and comparing air quality data from different countries, cities, regions is key to understand where we are and to enlighten the routes for improvement, including the identification of trends and best practices that can be replicated. In that sense, it is very important that we move forward in identifying the metrics that need to be measured. In the assessment, there is a very clear framework, a very clear picture on what has been the progress that has been made, but also the actions that in which we are still lagging behind. So defining what are the metrics for this benchmarking will be really important for LAC and for other regions, as well as collecting and comparing data with peer organizations, analyzing the data to identify areas for improvement, and implementing changes based on the analysis and outcome of the data assessment. I would like to close just by saying that we have been repeating over the years, perhaps for more than 10 years, that 7 million people are killed a year. In these 10 years, it means that there have been 70 million people killed in 10 years. And so that means that we need to strengthen our collaboration. Let's work together because we can save lives and advance our climate goals. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Very strong statement. Thank you. A lot of experience, as you said, that goes into this. And let me turn maybe now to our three country representatives from the African region. And obviously, well, the Latin America report, the integrated assessment, was the first one that we did. So that goes in the CCAC, that goes back quite a few years, and we learned quite a bit in the process. The second was the one for Asia and Pacific, and the third, Africa, was just launched last year. So it was a whole process there as well. We were able to anchor that one as well in the Africa We Want 2063 agenda. So a very, very strong angle with sustainable development. So there's an evolution in how we tell the narrative as well. What are the indicators that we look at? And we did come up with a few more solutions there as well. But I would like to ask, and we have three countries, two of them members of the CCAC since 2014. Cameroon is a recent member, but super active as well, and really amazing to see what has been done already in that period of time. You've all reflected the outcomes of integrated assessments in your NDCs, and I would like to ask now what this Africa assessment that comes now is actually doing to help. What do you think in terms of next steps to build upon this assessment? What is on the line, and what kind of support is needed for that to happen?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'll much more speak in French.
Okay.
I'm much more comfortable.
So you'll all need your
OK.
headsets.
Alors, merci déjà de nous associer à cette importante réflexion qui nous réunit ici aujourd'hui. Je vais commencer mon propos en disant que l'une des plus grosses faiblesses de nos CDN a toujours été de prendre les questions d'adaptation et d'atténuation comme des questions centrales, sans prendre en considération les questions périphériques, qui sont généralement des questions de santé, des questions de développement économique. Et cette faiblesse-là a fait que de nombreux pays africains, bien qu'ayant pris des engagements sur le plan du changement climatique, ont un peu moins mis en œuvre leurs engagements dans l'ensemble. Et pourquoi? Parce que la plupart des décisions dans les pays en développement peuvent être davantage orientés vers des questions socio-économiques et non pas réellement vers des questions directes de changement climatique. Cette particularité fait que les études d'évaluation qui ont été faites dans le cadre des SLCP et de la CCAC apportent une plus-value supplémentaire à la question de la prise en compte réelle des changements climatiques dans les processus de développement dans les pays en développement. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on peut désormais faire le lien direct entre le changement climatique, la pollution de l'air et la santé humaine. Et donc, lorsqu'on est capable de mettre sur la table des données en termes de santé humaine, il est plus facile pour un politicien dans les pays en développement de s'engager parce qu'il sait que là, il a l'affaire à la population, il a affaire à une population qui est sensible et donc sa motivation est beaucoup plus objective que par le passé. Alors, si nous devons parler de qu'est-ce que nous attendons, alors l'étude qui a été faite pour l'évaluation de la pollution de l'air, l'effet sur la santé, le changement climatique pour la zone Afrique, a été l'une des études qui a beaucoup marqué la décision du Cameroun d'entrer dans le CCAC et de participer à cette nouvelle orientation stratégique. Pour la simple raison que lorsque nous avons déjà 5 secteurs qui ont été définis avec 37 mesures bien classiques, ça permet déjà d'avoir une plus grande vue d'ensemble de ce qui peut être fait pour ce qui est des SLCP au niveau des pays. Toutefois, si l'étude a été faite au niveau régional, nous pensons qu'il est toujours important que les études soient menées non seulement au niveau régional, mais au niveau local et infranational. Pourquoi? Parce que la plus grande expérience, enfin, l'observation qui a été faite, c'est que lorsque nous travaillons sur des questions comme celle-là, on s'intéresse aux grandes villes, surtout pour la pollution de l'air. Mais l'effet cumulatif des plus petites villes peut être beaucoup plus important que l'effet d'une seule grande ville. Et donc, nous pensons que ramener les études à un niveau désagrégé, à un niveau infranational, permettrait peut-être d'avoir un plus grand effet et de meilleurs résultats par effet cumulatif. Pourquoi? Au niveau des petites villes, les actions sont beaucoup moins importantes qu'au niveau des grandes villes et coûtent généralement moins cher. Et on a de meilleurs résultats à court terme. Dans les grandes villes, parfois, la mobilisation financière est un peu plus importante parce qu'il faut faire beaucoup de modifications et d'adaptations. Et ça fait que beaucoup de pays sont très peu enclins à s'engager dans cette question-là. Alors, l'idée serait donc que pour pouvoir atteindre les objectifs qui sont les nôtres, que la triptyque de 3 grands piliers soit vraiment mise en place. La première, c'est des données suffisamment robustes, désagrégées et qui permettent de prendre une décision objective. Ces données vont certainement nourrir des stratégies beaucoup plus efficaces, beaucoup plus adaptées et qui permettent aux pays, au niveau national, infranational et même local, de participer tout chacun à son niveau à des actions qui permettent d'avoir un résultat global collectif. Et enfin, le dernier aspect, c'est celui qui est lié au financement. L'environnement et le paysage financier aujourd'hui sur les questions de changement climatique reste très complexe et beaucoup trop flou. Nous pensons que pour ce qui est, par exemple, des SLCP, un mécanisme financier qui est adapté, dédié, avec des méthodes beaucoup plus transparentes, beaucoup plus simples d'accès, peut encourager davantage les pays à entrer dans cette option-là, parce que nous avons vu les difficultés qu'il y a avec les mécanismes financiers actuels, et nous pensons que on devrait pouvoir partir de ces expériences-là pour proposer quelque chose qui est beaucoup plus simple. Partant du fait que si on a des données robustes, des actions beaucoup plus claires, le financement, lui, devient conséquent et beaucoup plus efficace. Nous restons convaincus également que le transfert des technologies et des savoir-faire ne devrait plus être entre les pays développés et les pays en développement, mais aussi au niveau des hub, au niveau des pays en développement, parce que lorsque nous avons un pays qui est plus avancé, il est plus facile, lorsque nous partageons les mêmes conditions socio-économiques, d'échanger entre nous et donc de faire un partage d'expérience, plutôt que de parfois travailler avec des pays développés où les paramètres d'analyse ne sont pas nécessairement ceux qui sont proches de nous et qui rendent une certaine confusion, soit en surévaluant, soit en sous-évaluant les paramètres qui pourraient être ceux des pays en développement. Et je pense que la mise en place de ces hubs régionaux peut nous aider à avoir une action beaucoup plus rapide parce qu'elle est de proximité et qu'elle est efficace et adaptée à notre contexte. Merci.
Je vous remercie beaucoup. C'était super clair et en temps record, énormément d'informations, très, très, très instructif. Merci beaucoup. And with that, maybe we move to Morocco. Abdelali.
Je vais continuer également en français, donc si vous me permettez. Bonjour tout le monde. Et merci pour la CCAC, pour le PNUE, pour l'ensemble des organisateurs qui ont fait de cette réunion importante et qui fera encore plus pour sa bonne réussite. Concernant donc la question donc de cette évaluation au niveau africain de la problématique du changement climatique et de la pollution de l'air en particulier, et avec les mesures qui ont été identifiées également sur le secteur sur lequel on travaillait, ça corrobore exactement avec les secteurs sur lesquels également le Maroc a travaillé au niveau donc de sa stratégie changement climatique de manière générale, de sa stratégie de développement durable, et pour juste dire donc que ce qui se ferait et ce qui se fera et ce qui se fait aujourd'hui en termes donc de qualité de l'air et de la lutte contre la pollution, donc les SLCP, c'est une continuité des efforts qui sont déjà engagés donc par le passé. Je vais juste dire donc quelques exemples que par exemple sur le secteur des transports, il y a eu un certain nombre de mesures, pour ne citer que quelques-unes. La problématique liée donc aux vieilles véhicules, donc notamment au niveau des taxis et des camions. Donc une prime à la casse a été accordée donc depuis quelques années avec une évaluation qui était faite, et il y a eu donc comme effet positif un rajeunissement du parc de ces taxis et des camions. Il y a eu également des effets, disons, un certain nombre de mesures sur la qualité donc des carburants, notamment du diesel, avec sa teneur en soufre, donc qui était avant 2000 autour de 10 000 ppm, donc au niveau de sa teneur en soufre, et puis par la suite à 2005 on est revenu à 350 ppm, et aujourd'hui donc à partir de 2015 on est à 10 ppm. Donc des parties par million au niveau de la teneur en soufre, au niveau du gasoil. Donc il y a un certain nombre donc de mesures qui ont été réalisées, et pour dire que donc au niveau aussi d'un certain nombre d'autres secteurs, le secteur résidentiel, le secteur de l'agriculture, le secteur donc de l'industrie, etc. Pour dire quelques mesures également qui sont en lien direct avec la problématique donc du collines, donc comme ça a été cité auparavant par nos amis donc et de la Corée et du Japon. Donc pour dire que au niveau du collines également, il y a eu un certain nombre de mesures d'efficacité énergétique qui sont liées directement ou indirectement à cette problématique donc d'efficacité énergétique dans l'industrie, pour ne citer que le standard des MEPS, minimum énergie standard pour les équipements, pour ne citer que également l'étiquetage des équipements disons utilisés donc en matière d'électroménager, pour on ne citait aussi également que le règlement thermique dans le domaine du bâtiment, qui est quand même aussi le secteur du bâtiment et de la construction, est un secteur très énergivore et qui se situe en deuxième position après celui des transports au niveau national. Et donc il y a un certain nombre de mesures qui sont bien sûr intégrées dans le cadre de la CDN que le Maroc a soumis dans le cadre de l'accord de Paris, et qui se croisent également donc avec un effet bénéfique aussi bien pour la qualité de l'air que pour les gaz à effet de serre, donc dans ce sens-là. Voilà, donc je dirais donc c'est une continuité des efforts, c'est un renforcement également donc de la lutte contre la pollution de l'air à travers donc les SLCP. Nous avons bien sûr avec la coopération avec la CCAC établi notre inventaire et notre plan d'action national des SLCP en 2021. Aujourd'hui, nous continuons d'autres actions ciblées sur au moins donc deux autres volets. Le volet de la feuille de route sur le méthane, tout secteur confondu, avec une prioritisation donc des actions dans différents secteurs, et puis également l'évaluation du potentiel donc du méthane au niveau au moins de 3 décharges disons représentatives de l'ensemble des décharges du Maroc, avec bien sûr l'idée donc encore d'une généralisation par la suite donc de la démarche à cette action-là. Nous sommes bien sûr parallèlement à cela, il y a d'autres mesures qui sont en cours donc d'élaboration, notamment le MRV donc du secteur donc et du suivi donc du méthane, et également des actions en cours également donc de développement dans le cadre donc de refroidissement, donc dans le cadre du Colline système, avec bien sûr une prochaine intégration, dans une prochaine adhésion dans le cadre du Colline, de Global Colline Pledge, à l'instar du Global Methane Pledge, sur lequel donc nous nous sommes engagés dans le cadre donc à l'occasion de la COP 26 de Glasgow. Merci.
Fantastique. Merci beaucoup aussi. Très riche et très complémentaire et merci d'avoir donné quelques exemples aussi de l'action dans les différents secteurs. Je trouve que c'était très très illustrant, et aussi de nous avoir amené déjà à la COP 28 avec par exemple la Cooling Pledge. Il y aura plus de discussions sur ce sujet-là, par exemple cet après-midi dans une des sessions. Donc voilà, et avec cela, parce que je regarde le temps, on n'en a plus beaucoup dans cette session, je me tourne vers and I switch language. I will turn to Kenya now and give Sela Okot the floor.
Thank you very much, Martina. Thank you, CCAC and UNEP, for organizing this wonderful workshop. Indeed, it has come at the right time for us because one is to probably note that we don't have a common treaty that puts air quality in Africa that brings African countries to discuss air pollution as a key agenda. Whereas there is a lot of effort in climate change, which is a global commitment that you've seen, I think then this leaves issues of air quality not well attended to over the years. From the integrated assessment for Africa, I think there is notable commitment from the African political leaders through the African Ministerial Conference on Environment on the need to have integrated action towards air quality and climate change actions. And I think this gives us a very good opportunity to move this agenda forward. When we look at what we've seen from the 37 recommendations from this assessment, there is actually notable progress in every part of Africa, but then you realize that they are not harmonized and they're not speaking to each other. Even those who are involved, there is no common platform to discuss or learn from each other. And I think from what we pick, there would be need, therefore, to probably also want to work on this integrated emissions inventory. I think scattered efforts are there. And I think it's time to have this synchronized and harmonized, because if we are to push this agenda forward, then we need to have this speaking to each other. What's exactly the issue with air quality? And because we all appreciate that they have common sources, they have common drivers. The other thing that would be good to have, I think there's need to actually harmonize policies and legislations. Back at home in Kenya, what I see is that we have the Climate Change Act, we have the air quality regulations, and that it's no meeting point. Whereas we get data on air quality, and you also get data on greenhouse gas emissions, but there's no point that you appreciate that how can we steer what we are doing in both the regimes to make it better. So there are actually scattered efforts, and I think it's time to harmonize the policies, to harmonize the legislations to strengthen this particular action that we are looking forward to. And in terms of governance and institutional coordination, I think that largely has been missing. And at country level, you realize various agencies that work in this, they're not united in terms of efforts. Across, beyond Kenya, even in Africa, where is our common platform to discuss these issues? And I think these are things that we need to start looking into and strengthen that going forward. And of course, this should not be only within the African context, but also to pick from the developed countries just to see what they have been doing and also give it as an opportunity to strengthen. I look at the upcoming African summit in Nairobi, and I see that this is a very great opportunity to put this agenda of integration of air quality and climate change strongly together, because in the past we've experienced where there's a lot of support for climate change globally, but when it comes to air quality in terms of action to improve air quality, there's very little support, especially in aspects of funding. And I think if we leverage on this, I think we are building on those particular opportunities that will see the energy synergies that we're looking forward to. And in terms of what kind of support, I look at us as people who would really need the bit of technological and technical assistance, because there's a lot that we need to do, and probably we tend to have a certain capacity gaps. And also in terms of resource mobilization, because there's a lot of need to support what we envisage to do. So basically, that's what I would want to say for now. Thank you.
I really wish to thank our distinguished panel. Very, very rich. Thank you for your thoughts on how this integrated assessment and planning can help drive action. And I think overall we have seen this coming out in both panels, actually, how important it is to get the right information. You said that, Camila. The right information to make the political arguments. It was echoed throughout, actually, to help with the arguments, getting the socio-economic questions into the game as well, not only taking it from an environmental perspective to speak to all the different policy considerations and drivers. Then we talked about getting the information at different levels. Regional information is really good as a starting point. It helps as well to compare. It helps drive action, maybe get over some bottlenecks in terms of the solutions as well. But it's also needed at the national and at the local level. We heard a vibrant call for that to help break it down, to help really with the prioritization and to help with speeding up the implementation, inform and speeding up the implementation. We heard about the data analysis and how important it is to actually pull out the trends. But beyond that, to really do the analysis and see where the legislation is also needed to help driving things forward. What are the kinds of right matrices? What do we need to add into this to help us? The second is, a lot of this has informed the NDCs that are out there that have been revised. That is a major trigger and driver for the action to help with the implementation. Again, we heard that there's a strong connection or correlation with what has ended up in the NDCs and where then legislation or standards have followed. We heard about the MEPs, for example, that were put into place, the minimum performance standards, and all the sector action that has evolved from there. We heard, the emissions inventories. I should have mentioned that with regard to the data. The emissions inventories that are more integrated do help with this as well. And we heard from the earlier session also the example from the integrated inventories with regard to the private sector. So there's something that I see is coming together as well, so that we sort of speak the same language and then lead to the interaction between the public and the private sector much more, which then goes back to also the call for more finance, or the right kind of finance. We heard that it's important to have South-South transfer of technology as well, much more experience sharing there, to help accelerate the action. And then I have another thought that I wanted to hold that came out of the session here. In Asia Pacific, if you have this process that we heard about earlier this morning already, to help drive the action at the policy, well, the political level and the policy level, regionally. And in Latin America, there is the regional action plan that has been agreed upon. So that's a process that's starting now, going forward. And we just heard for the African region, there's no regional, it's not yet at the same level, but we heard that at the AMSON meeting, the last one, there was a step into this. We heard as well that there's a clean air plan that's in the pipeline of the African Union Commission. So it's starting. But I see there's a real move out there for this regional cooperation. I hope this will take us to strengthened action and this mutual support that we will see. And if we combine it with what we heard in the opening session from the Asian Development Bank, then looking back at how it relates with the finance, how it unlocks some of that because the policy priorities are so clear. And maybe with that, we come really to the end of this. We're 4 minutes over. I have only a few housekeeping remarks to make. We now have a lunch break till 2 o'clock. The lunch is served the ground floor, basically where you came in, where you entered. There's in the back, you see some tables and chairs covered with white cloth. That's the place where we are. The team will help us find your way down there as well. In the afternoon, we will be able to dive into much more detail in a lot of what we just said through parallel sessions. I would like to encourage you to have a look at where they are and the titles. So we have in CR3, towards achieving clean air for blue skies in Seoul, Incheon and Gyeonggi. We have in CR1, the meeting of the waste hub. And we have in MRF, the heavy duty diesel vehicles and engines, and in MRG, the fossil fuel, oil and gas, methane. And then we'll have a coffee break and then a second round of those parallel sessions. But please find your way around. The team is here to help. The numbering is quite well done, but if you have any need for assistance, come to us and we'll show you where the right rooms are. With that, thank you again. Applause for our panel and bon appetit.